Saga 105.7 FM.
Across midday, and to our first guest today, who began her TV career here in the West Midlands. But it was on TV AM that she became nationally well-known, with another well-known West Midlands face and former guest of this programme, Nick Owen. She's also worked on Good Morning with Anna Nick, with Nick Owen, made here in Birmingham. Recently, though, Celebrity Big Brother and Celebrity Fit Club have introduced her to a whole new audience and reminded a former audience as to who she actually is. Broadcaster and journalist Anne Diamond. Anne, good morning to you.
Good morning, hello.
How are you?
I'm very well, actually. Extremely well. I haven't been better.
Excellent. This is what we wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Before we get into what we're going to be talking about this morning, what makes a journalist want to go on telly?
Oh, that's a very good question, because that sort of dilemma faced me when I was in Birmingham. Did I or did I not sort of go down the telly route? I don't know. It just happened to me. I look back now and think I was just very lucky. Just opportunity came my way. I was invited for an audition at ATV, and I thought, no, I don't want to do that sort of thing, really. And then I thought, oh, I'd love to go and see what it's like. And I tell you what swung it, Tiswas came out of ATV,
yeah. And
I'd always been a fan of Tiswas, and I knew that the local news came out of the same studio, Studio 3. And it's curiosity really about Tiswas that took me to that audition, and the audition was just the most exciting thing that I'd ever done up until that point, and I was offered the job, so there was no looking back really.
So in reality then, it wasn't journalism you wanted to be, you wanted a custard pie in your face.
Yeah, that's right. I wanted to co-present with Chris Tarrant, I suppose. Yeah. No, I mean, we were all in love with Tiswas in those days.
Oh, absolutely.
Weren't we?
Absolutely, huge part of our.
And do you know, I used to read the news every day of the week, but on a Friday, the minute I'd said the words sort of, and that's it from us, see you next week, even before the lights were out, they would clear us out of the way, they would push the chairs out of the way, we'd be flung out of the studio, and the Tiswas crew would move in to get the studio ready for Tiswas the next morning. Oh, it was such fun. And one of the great things about being a member of the team there was that on a Saturday morning I could come in with my ATV pass and sit in that studio and just watch Tiswas go out live. Oh, it was just brilliant.
Yes, it's a huge part of television history, as is TVAM, of course.
Yeah.
Now, you found yourself in a situation at TVAM where, retrospectively, we all think TVAM was a big success. When you got on the sofa at TVAM, it was about to fall apart completely, wasn't it?
Well, it had already fallen apart, really, as much as it could without actually keeling over and dying. And Nick had been flung into the David Frost role, the great big central role. His picture was all over the front page of the Times that morning. I mean, that was the sort of enormity of the news. And everybody was ready to see this television station sink before it had really succeeded in any way at all. And then the combination of me, Nick and Roland Rat was sort of dubbed the saviours of the station. We just gave them a programme that was a really good mix of news and humour and showbiz and everything else. And you know what? People liked it. And every week, and Chris, of course, Chris Tarrant, we were working back with him then. Yes. He was live on the beaches of Britain every morning, because it was the summer of '83. And every single week the audience went up by about 200,000 or 300,000, and by the end of the summer we had well over 3 million, and suddenly we were successful, and we became Britain's most successful ever television station to date.
And you look at Chris Tarrant on the beach, went on to do a very successful breakfast show in London. Look at This Morning. I don't think we would have had This Morning without you and Nick doing TVAM.
No, that's right, exactly. It was sort of like the birth of sofa television.
It was, wasn't it?
Of relaxed television, yeah.
Now, one more question before we take a pause, because it comes back to my first question, and it comes to what we're going to be talking about in just a moment. Your relationship with food and your weight and TV, is there a link?
Oh, I don't know. I never really thought of it like that. How do you mean? How could it be?
The pressure of being on television, the pressure of always having to look good.
We were just talking about this outside just before I came in, and I think there's more of maybe the pressure to keep you're on television, it keeps you disciplined, it keeps you, you just cannot put on weight if you're on television every day. But the minute you go to radio, you've got to be very careful, because radio and putting on weight does seem to go hand in hand. It has with me, and without naming names, it has with others.
Yes.
And there's something dangerous. You're probably sitting there now in your pyjamas, you see, and we don't know. No, none of us listening know.
Yeah, true.
And that's the problem. I used to sit doing a breakfast programme in London with Sir Nick Lloyd, another Nick, and we used to eat toast for 3 hours. Basically, eat toast and drink coffee for 3 hours. And in the end, you do end up a little fatter than when you started.
You see, I have fruit now, because I stopped this about a year ago.
You've really got to watch it, haven't you?
Yeah, you have, because you can just sit here and then your jeans shrink in the wash.
It's like drivers. Anyone who drives for a living knows that it's such an easy trap to fall into eating while you drive. And I think you can eat while you radio. You've got to be very careful. Let's
take a pause for a piece of music. Our guest this morning is Anne Diamond here at Saga 105.7 FM. There's Smokey Robinson, Tears of a Clown, Saga 105.7 FM. Still with us this morning is Anne Diamond, and she's joined now by Dr. Shaw Summers. Anne, let's talk about Celebrity Fit Club.
Do you know, the words make my skin crawl?
Yeah, I bet they do. Why did you keep the gastric band that you had fitted a secret from Celebrity Fit Club? I'd
gone to get a gastric band in Belgium, and it hadn't worked. And by the time Celebrity Fit Club came along, I'd given up on it completely. I couldn't figure out why I was the only person on the planet for whom this amazing surgery had not worked. And I just become convinced that it was a gizmo I'd fallen for. And that it was, you know, like a lot of gadgets, it was useless. It just wasn't working at all for me. And I'd become convinced that probably I was going to become a fat old lady. And I can't tell you how depressing that thought was. And then when Celebrity Fit Club came along, I thought maybe the health message, the ritual humiliation of a public weigh-in, and actually what they sold to me very much is that, you know, we've got the leading experts, we will put you through your paces, and everybody succeeds on this show. I thought, all right, yes, maybe this is the thing that will crack it for me. So basically, to answer your question, I'd given up on the gastric band because it wasn't working for me.
Let's find out a bit more about these gastric bands. Shaw, let's come to you, because this is your area of expertise. How do they work?
Good morning. Well, gastric bands are a device that have been around for about 20 to 30 years now. Essentially, it's like a little inflatable rubber ring that you put around the top of the stomach, so that instead of the stomach being a floppy bag, it turns into an hourglass. So food will go into a little pouch at the top of the stomach. It'll sit around above the band, above the constriction for a while before it passes on into the rest of the stomach and through the digestion. The net result of that is that you will feel much more full after eating, and that the food will stay with you for longer. And it makes you eat slowly, makes you eat and chew more thoroughly, and by making meals last a lot longer, stops you eating quite as much. And it's nothing very much more complicated than just that.
Now, Anne mentioned a moment ago that she went to Belgium to have hers done. Why did hers fail? Because it seems like a simple procedure you're describing here that is obviously very effective, but why did it fail?
I think the main reason Anne's failed was that the band wasn't quite in the right position. These things are mechanical devices to aid what is an everyday process, and everybody eats in a slightly different way. Some people bolt their food, some people eat slowly, some people chew better than others, and you really have to work with your patient to decide what kind of operation works best, whether it's banding or whether it's one of the other types of operation that's available, and if banding is appropriate, how the band should be used, where it should be fitted. And these are something that only really a specialist in the field can provide you with. And I think one of the problems with going abroad is they can't quite pick up on exactly what your requirements and needs are. It's very much more a production line.
So we're talking about here a piece of surgery that needs to be done properly rather than a production line, to quote you.
I think that's right, and this is where, you know, you get what you pay for comes into the equation.
Anne, what made you go to Belgium then?
Well, I did want to keep the whole thing quiet. I mean, I really did want to do this completely confidentially, so that I would just get my health back, my figure back, and everybody would just accept that. I never, ever planned for this to be public. But in the end, when I eventually ended up with, in Shaw's hands, literally, and we looked at the X-ray of the job that I'd had done in Belgium, I was gobsmacked. I mean, basically, Shaw was being very doctorish there and sort of being very... but in my terms, it was in the wrong place. The thing was in the wrong place. And I couldn't work. You can't work with it, or at least I couldn't work with it under those circumstances, and no wonder it wasn't working for me. Now I've got a band that's in the right place, and the thing works. It's brilliant, actually.
Let's take a quick pause for a piece of music. We'll talk more about how it works in just a moment at Saga 105.7 FM. Russell Watson, Valara here at Saga 105.7 FM. Still with us this morning, we have Anne Diamond and Dr. Shaw Summers. Shaw, just to be absolutely clear, this surgery that we're talking about with Anne, this gastric band surgery, where does it fit in with diet and nutrition as an option for weight loss?
Essentially, surgery should be looked on as the last resort, and the criteria that I would use as a surgeon is that a patient will have tried their very best with either supervised dieting, which I would include a lot of the diet clubs that you can go to, with or without help from the GP with tablets, for at least a couple of years, and to have demonstrated that they just cannot lose significant weight in that time. Plus, the weight has to be of a level that it's starting to affect your health. Then you are eligible for consideration for surgery, and then it's over to a specialist like myself to decide what sort of surgery would suit best and how it should be done.
I feel awful using the word with Anne Diamond with us, but are we talking about obesity?
We're talking about obesity in all its various classifications. I think the classification that most people medically would consider is what we call morbid obesity, obesity that causes morbidity or illness, not just looks morbid. And that is people who are more than about a third overweight, in other words, your normal body weight plus a third. Then we start to get interested as surgeons, because the operations now are much safer, it's keyhole surgery, the recoveries are quicker, and therefore the benefits are easily better than the risks. You know, the balance of risks that we look into is easily towards surgery.
Anne, let's come back to you for the final question. Now, having had this done by the hospital group, and I know you're going to be doing a tour to explain the whole story, the whole backstory behind all this.
Well, there are a lot of lessons to learn, from my story. I made some big mistakes.
Oh, sorry about that. Don't know what that was. That was my
punishment for my mistakes.
That was a punishment, yes, indeed. So what lessons have you learnt, Anne?
Well, you get what you pay for, I think. If you're going to pay for this operation privately, then you need to do a lot of research and start with reading my story, because it'll give you the questions that you must ask of your surgeon wherever you decide to go. The full story of it is on my website, which is there to support people who are overweight and battling it in all sorts of different ways, certainly not just about surgery, fathappens.com. And there you'll be able to find out really what I did wrong and hopefully learn from my mistakes. But I basically just went for a cut-price operation abroad where I thought I would would be nice and anonymous, and I learned that it's not all you think.
Nicely put.
Yeah.
and obviously, from your point of view, Shaw, the operation is an operation that has to be done properly to actually last the course of the treatment it's designed to achieve.
Afraid so. Absolutely right.
But if you get it done properly, by God, it works.
And is it permanent?
Designed to be permanent, yes. If you take the band away, people's habits unfortunately go back to what they were. But it's people learn to live with it, they work with it, and we tend to leave it in place for good.
Well, I'm going to give out that website again after our next song. Anne Diamond and Dr. Shaw Summers, thanks very much for being our guest this morning here at Saga 105.7 FM.